Depression is the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel like there's this common misconception about depression that it's sadness, it's despair, it's a negative feeling. And in my experience, I'm not saying that that's not true, but I feel like those negative feelings are more so the effect of depression and not the essence of depression. Depression at its core is the loss of purpose, the loss of hope, and the loss of self. And with that comes this feeling of emptiness, which can be filled with positivity or negativity. And oftentimes it's filled with negativity, which is how you end up depressed. That's how you end up being at that low point in your life. And in this video, I want to explain how I got past that point and how I learned to cleanse myself of that negative energy and fill that space with positivity and faith and get to where I am today. Because in hindsight, had I not gone through depression, I would not be where I am right now. Depression was such a powerful, pivotal point in my life that I had to get to where I am right now. There was no other choice. The alternative was death, if I'm being quite honest. And you guys will see what I mean later on in the video. Now, my depression story begins back in college. I was a pretty happy kid growing up, but I hated school. That was something that stayed true throughout my entire childhood, all the way through the end of high school. I hated school a lot. And I was very good in school, so it threw a lot of people off because they just assumed that I liked school because I got good grades. And me being the insecure person that I was, I wanted to please other people, especially my parents and anybody who may perceive me in a different way or in a different light for going to college, especially going to a higher end university, a prestigious university. Now, after I graduated high school, I had a lot of time to think and contemplate on where I wanted to go with my life. I knew deep down in my heart that I did not want to go to college. I knew from the moment that I walked out of those doors at my high school for the last time, January 19th, 2018. I still remember that day because it was one of the happiest days of my life. But as the summer went on, I dreaded the feeling of going to college. So much so that I decided to go to community college instead of going to regular college. In hindsight, this was one of the best moves that I could have made for myself because it allowed me more flexibility, and I ended up dropping out, quite obviously, which is why I'm filming this video right now. This is what I do. But I went to community college and I felt more lost than ever before. Any sense of self that I had developed throughout my first 18 years, I lost when I went to college. One thing that they told me in high school was that college is a place to go to find yourself. Now, at that age, when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that is a good time to find yourself. But when you look around you and it seems like everyone else has a sense of direction, that can make you feel more lost than ever before when you start to compare yourself to other people who seem to have their head on straight, especially when you go to community college and you're surrounded by a bunch of 30-year-olds who know exactly why they're there. And then there's me, this 18-year-old, who has no idea why I'm sitting in that classroom because I know that that's not conducive to the life that I want, which is a life in which I work for myself and do what I want to do on my own terms. Now, throughout all of this, I tried to convince myself that college was the right move and that it would pay off in the end. But what I realized was that the reward was not the reward that I actually wanted. And I tried to ignore that feeling, but I knew deep down that I did not belong there. And the longer I stayed in college, the worse my mental health got. Now, the thing about depression is that it doesn't happen all at once. It creeps up on you. Okay, when you go on your self-improvement journey, you don't transform your life overnight. It happens over the course of weeks and months and years. It's the same thing with depression. It doesn't just happen all at once. Over time, you begin to experience certain things that may be foreign to you, things that you may not have ever previously experienced, and it's a very scary feeling. It's extremely scary, especially for a young 18-year-old like myself at the time who lacked direction. Now, this loss of self combined with the stress of being in college, it drove me into a state of depression for the first time in my life. Now, I experienced a lot of the telltale symptoms of depression without really realizing what they were or what they pointed to. I thought that I was just stressed, and I tried to push through it. I learned the hard way that you do not push through depression. You can't push through depression because it'll push back with 10 times the force that you push it with. Eventually, it got to that point where I was staying in bed all day, getting out of bed to eat breakfast at 9 o'clock at night. That's the point that I was at. And those days were, to be quite frank, miserable. They were some of the most miserable days of my life. There was this sense of emptiness that persisted. It felt like a dark cloud was above me at all times. And every once in a while, the sun might break through for just a little bit. But then the cloud would come back and it'd be worse than before. And this was, as I said earlier, something that I had never experienced before, so I didn't know how to handle it. Now, eventually, I built up the courage to drop out of college, and instantaneously, my depression disappeared. Now, my depression was gone for a while, or so I thought. But one thing I realized is that just because your depression is gone now doesn't mean it won't come back, especially if you put yourself in a compromising situation, a situation that may be similar in many ways to the situation that caused your depression in the first place. For me, that situation was when I got a job working retail. Now, mind you, this job was not a bad job by any means. But by this point, I had already started my YouTube career. Or not so much my career, but I started posting videos on YouTube. Wasn't making money from it, which was why I was working. I needed to work so that I could buy more equipment to invest in my YouTube career and get to the point where I can make these videos full time like I do now. Now, me working retail, at first, it was great. I was making money. I was working towards my dreams. I was getting discounts on clothes, getting to talk to amazing people, and I got some of my friends to work with me. So overall, on the surface, it looked like a very great situation to be in. And it was for a while. But eventually, it got to that point where I felt like I was stagnating. I was getting stuck in that spot. I was being complacent with where I was in life. And it got to the point where thoughts of potentially putting YouTube to the side and taking a promotion in that job, in the retail field, and focusing more on that for the sake of money. Those thoughts started to cross my mind, and that was a very scary time in my life because I didn't drop out of college to work retail. The idea of letting go of my dreams just so that I can work at a retail job, that idea didn't sit too well with me. Now, that's no slight to anybody out there who works retail. If that's what you love to do, or if you're grinding to provide for your family or work towards something bigger for yourself, then, I applaud you. But for me, it wasn't the move. Now, while I was working retail, I, through many avenues, developed the confidence to begin dating, to begin putting myself out into the dating world via Tinder and other dating apps. And let's just say I didn't have much success in my dating life. I was very inexperienced, especially for a 19-year-old. And I got burned time and time again. And that really messed with my confidence, especially because I didn't have much confidence to begin with, which is why I was getting burned all the time. But I didn't know that. I just thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought I was inadequate. All of this culminated in me having my first real heartbreak in early 2020. Now, this time right here in my life, like I said earlier, I was working at a job that I didn't like, and the longer I went on working at that job, the more I resented it, the more I resented my life in general. And then on top of that, I wasn't gaining much traction in terms of my YouTube career. I was creating content that I felt didn't represent me as a person, but I felt stuck with that content because that was the only content that got me new subscribers or got me the views that I was looking for. Because at the end of the day, the goal was to build up my YouTube channel so that I wouldn't have to work at that job anymore. But if my YouTube channel's not going well, and even if it does go well, I'm creating content that I don't like to create. Now I'm having to choose between creating this content for the sake of money or working at this job for the sake of money. And neither path seemed very appealing to me. My life was falling apart. Okay, at this point, I'm a 19-year-old college dropout working at a dead-end job, and I have what seems like a pipe dream, don't have much confidence, don't have much success in dating, and then I meet this girl. Now, the reason why I said all of that is because I want to give you guys context as to how I developed such a quick and deep and profound attachment to this girl in such a short amount of time. This could not have happened to me in the mental state that I'm in right now. This was a result of me seeking happiness and fulfillment from outside of myself, which is something that I tell you guys time and time again to not do. And this is why you shouldn't do that. Okay, me being in that compromising situation in my life and losing whatever sense of direction I thought I had, I put all of my hope, all of my happiness, all of myself into this one girl. Within like 2 weeks to a month of us even exchanging our first messages. Needless to say, that didn't go as planned. Okay, imagine if you had $100 left to your name. That's all the money that you have, and you have to make that money work. You have to make that money last. You decide to take that $100 and spend it all on lottery tickets. Matter of fact, you spend it all on one lottery ticket. Now, if you win the lottery, you get $100 million. If you lose the lottery, you have $0 left. I lost the lottery, and I was devastated. All of the depression, all of the buildup from being in that situation in my life, putting all of the happiness that I had left into that one person, which was unfair for her. Okay, I'm willing to admit that. I was definitely in the wrong for doing that. I put her in a very tough, compromising situation as well, where she had to make a decision between my well-being and her well-being. And she chose her well-being, and rightfully so. But that left me devastated. And the depression that I had back in college, that came back tenfold. I had never in my life felt this alone. And I would not wish this feeling on anyone, which is why I want to take a moment to tell you guys about BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video. Now, if you're watching this video, and especially if you've made it this far into the video, the chances are that you see some of yourself in my story, which is good because I've gotten past this and I can help you do that. And I can help you do it in a more efficient way than what I did. One of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was going through my depression was I didn't seek help. I internalized everything. Believe me when I tell you that that is the worst thing that you can do for your mental health. That will not get you anywhere. Do not suppress your feelings. You have to learn to express yourself. But of course, you can't just tell anybody your feelings. You should put your feelings in the hands of trusted professionals. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. When you sign up, you can get connected with a licensed professional therapist within 48 hours, 2 days. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional counseling done securely online. All of this is confidential. You're putting your feelings and your problems in the hands of people who know how to fix them. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 15,000 plus counselor network, which may not be available locally in many areas. So I know that for some of you, you may not have access to a therapist who specializes in depression or anxiety or whatever you may be going through. But BetterHelp has you covered no matter what. And I know I have a large international audience. You may be wondering if BetterHelp is available in your country. BetterHelp is available anywhere where you have an internet connection. In other words, if you're watching this video, you have access to BetterHelp. You can log into your account at any time to send a message to your counselor, and you'll get a timely and thoughtful response, and you can schedule a weekly video or phone call, which will help you avoid having to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as you would with a traditional therapy setting. Now, of course, as you receive this professional help from BetterHelp, your needs are going to change because you're going to be growing as a person. Your depression is going to fade away. But that doesn't mean that you won't have problems in the future. But luckily for you, BetterHelp makes it free and easy to switch counselors if needed. Now, in addition to all of that, BetterHelp is cheaper than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. You have to be willing to invest in your mental health, because if you don't have this, you don't have anything. There is no success. There is no happiness. There is no love if you don't love yourself. Now, me, I could have avoided getting my heart broken like that had I gone to therapy in the first place, because I knew I wasn't right. I knew I didn't need to be dating anyone. But instead of seeking the professional help that I needed, I decided to invest my time and energy into that one person. And I got burned for it. That will happen to you when you join BetterHelp. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. So visit betterhelp.com/Jordan Green and get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Jordan Green. And join the over 1 million people who are taking charge of their mental health with the help of a professional counselor. Now, through all of these things that I went through, you may be wondering how I overcame my depression. Okay, for me, I did not seek professional help, and I do regret that. I think that that's something that would have helped me out quite a bit during that time. I had friends who were there for me, but friends can only help you so much. Okay, they're not people who specialize in these things. So at the end of the day, I was pretty much alone at this. Now, when I turned 20 years old, I can say that that was the turning point of my life. March 14th, 2020. That's when I made the commitment to get my life together. But most importantly, to get my mind together. Because as I said earlier, if you don't have your mind, you don't have anything. And for me, that involved a lot of uncomfortable introspection. I had to ask myself a lot of questions that I maybe didn't want to know the answer to, but I needed to know the answer to. Why was I developing these attachments so quickly? Why was I putting myself in these situations that I knew didn't serve me in my greater good? I realized that I didn't love myself enough to do what needed to be done. Because I knew deep down, if you notice through all of this, I always knew deep down when something wasn't right, when something needed to change. But I ignored those feelings because I didn't love myself enough to act on them. I was acting out of fear. I was acting out of insecurity, not knowing who I was and relying on other people to show me who I was. So what did I do? I quit my job, and right after that, quarantine happened. I used quarantine to work on myself. It's all there on my channel. You can see what I was doing during this time. I did a lot of introspection. Like I said earlier, I asked a lot of questions, and I found the answers to those questions. I learned a lot about myself, and I became true in who I was. I started to live a life that was true to what I wanted out of life, not to what other people wanted out of life. I stopped placing my happiness in the hands of other people, and I took charge of my own life, and I invested in myself. And that right there, that was the difference. But it all started with a decision to do what needed to be done, to ensure that I would have peace of mind. Now, you may be wondering, do I still deal with depression right now? And the answer is no, I do not. I am not depressed anymore, and I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, I do believe that when you go through depression, especially in the capacity that I went through it, where I was ready at one point to take my own life, that changes your perspective on things. It helped me realize that tomorrow is not promised, because there was a time when I didn't think I would make it to see today. And that right there, in hindsight, it's crazy to see how far I've come since then. And that's why I'm always telling these stories, is because I want to show you guys that it doesn't matter how down bad you are. If you still have your life, you still have a chance. You still have hope. You still have potential. You can make your life better by investing in yourself, by learning about yourself, and by loving yourself.